Hello, my name is Robert Dean Steele, and this is your daily Bible class. Let's look at Revelation chapter 11. We're looking at verses 1 and 2. It says, I was given a measuring stick, like a measuring rod, and was told, go and measure the temple of God and the altar with his worshippers, but exclude the outer court, and do not measure it, because it has been given to the Gentiles, and they will trample on the holy city for 42 months. So here we have this wonderful setup, this dramatic portrayal, getting ready for the two witnesses. But what's going on is the temple of the Lord and the altar belong to the worshipers. It belongs to the people of God, those who worship him in spirit and in truth. And he was given that responsibility. But then the second part has to do with the fact of the Gentiles. The outer court was not to be measured, because it was given to the Gentiles, and the Gentiles were going to trample on the holy city for 42 months. That means that the temple area would belong to the people of God, but the outer court and the city itself would be under the jurisdiction of the Gentiles. And they would do this for 42 months, and they would abuse their authority. They would abuse their right to be there. And this gets them all ready for the next stage. It says this, he says, verse number 3, he says, I will appoint 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy for 1260 days, clothed in sackcloth. So these 2 witnesses are now appointed. And what are they doing? They're prophesying. They're telling people about what is going on during the tribulation period. We've been looking at the judgments. We've been looking at the different things, the trumpet judgments, the other judgments that were given. And now these 2 witnesses are telling them why it is happening. And it says that they are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands. They stand before the Lord of the earth. And so they are the ones with the anointing. They are the ones with the light, because that's what olive trees are all about. It's about the anointing. And then the lampstands, of course, are fairly self-explanatory. They are the light. And so these 2 witnesses, and they're doing this with sackcloth on. And while they're doing it, they stand before the Lord of the earth. They're saying, we are standing on behalf of God himself. And this is why this is happening. People are not repenting. People are not turning from their sins. They're still following the doctrines of devils. They're still following the things of this world. And so these 2 witnesses come along. They are standing in the anointing of God. They are the light in the darkness right now. And it says, if anyone tries to harm them, fire comes out of their mouth and devours their enemies. Imagine that. You have troops that will come against them. You will have leaders that will come against them. Anyone that comes against them will be devoured by fire that comes out of their mouth. They will have a supernatural protection. And it says this is how anyone who tries to harm them must die. These men not only are light, these men are not only anointed, but they're also men who are protected by God himself. They have a natural mechanism of defense, which is fire that comes out of their mouth. And it's interesting that they also says here in verse number 6, they have the power to shut up the heavens so it will not rain during the time that they're prophesying. And they have the power to turn water into blood and strike the earth with every kind of plague as often as they want. Now, there's a lot of speculation about who these men are. Or there are those who believe that they are Elijah and Moses. And the reason they believe that is because of the fact that, number one, they have the power to stop the rain. Elijah, of course, had the power to stop the rain, and he did stop the rain for 3.5 years. And so that's why they believe that at least one of them is Elijah. And then, of course, secondly, they have the power to turn water into blood and strike the earth with every kind of plague as often as they want. And so, because of the fact that they have the power to turn the water into blood and strike the earth, most people believe it's Moses. Now, there are also those who believe that it could be Elijah and Enoch. And the reason being is because these are the two men who have never died. We have in the book of Genesis, of course, Enoch going for a walk with God, and he's taken from God and never sees death. And then, of course, we have in the book of Kings, we have the story of Elijah. That's 2 Kings, by the way. The story of Elijah going up into the heavens with a chariot of fire. So, there are those that also believe that. We don't know the identity. We can speculate on the identity of these two. You can believe that it's Moses and Elijah. I think it's fairly simple from what we've got the evidence here, that one of them is Elijah. Now, whether the other one is Moses or Enoch, well, we're only speculating. But from the scriptures, we have some evidence of at least the possibility of their identity. We do know this, that they have the power to strike the earth with every kind of plague as often as they want. Now understand, they are under the anointing of God, and they are being used by God to do this very thing. Then it goes on to say, now when they had finished their testimony, the beast comes up from the abyss and attacks them and overpowers them and kills them. So we have this beast coming from the abyss. Basically the same place where the angel of the Lord came from, or the last chapter where we're introduced to Apollyon or Abaddon. But we do know that there's a beast that comes from the abyss, and he attacks them. And something happens. He overpowers them and kills them. You see, they were designed to only bring their witness for 1,260 days, or 42 months. And so he's able to overpower them, he's able to attack them, and he's able to kill them. And so their bodies lie in the public square of the great city, which is called Sodom and Egypt. It's also where the Lord was crucified. Now, obviously, that is Jerusalem. But in this time period, it's known as Sodom or Egypt, because it belongs to the Gentiles. It's where the center of everything is going to happen. But this is where the Antichrist has kept his eyes on what's going on. And it says, for 3.5 days, some from every people, tribe, and language and nation will gaze at their body and refuse them burial. What will happen is the world will be so full of hatred towards these individuals that when they're killed, they'll rejoice. It says the inhabitants of the earth will gloat over them and celebrate by sending each other gifts because of these two prophets who had tormented those who lived on the earth. You see, they've got all the judgment of God. But as well, these two prophets are there for 1,260 days, and they have been an instrument of God, telling people about what is going on. But also as well, with the ability to protect themselves, they have tormented, and in the minds of the people of the earth, they have tormented them. And so there's such a hatred towards these two righteous men. And you have to understand the reason why is because the whole world is being ruled by the unholy trinity of the beast, the Antichrist, and Satan himself. And says, for 3.5 days they have this party, and everyone is going to see it. Listen to this. But after 3.5 days, the breath of God enters into them, and they stood up on their feet, and they struck those who saw them. You see, the whole world is going to be able to see this, and the whole world will see this, because the simple fact is, with our modern technology, no matter what happens around the world, it is instantaneously shown on satellite and on television, on the internet. I mean, social media will absolutely explode with all the events that are happening, especially for 3.5 days. They're saying these two terrible men, they'll call them religious bigots, they'll call them zealots, they'll call them haters, they'll call them everything they can, because the simple fact is the world is evil, and we live in a world right now where that which is good is evil, and that which is evil is good. But right in front of national TV, right in front of everyone, I can see I'm thinking of Wolf Blitzer saying, yes, the two prophets these two men who have been tormenting the world have been dead for 3.5 days. And they probably have CNN with all the cameras and all the different reporters are standing in front of these two bodies. And they said, these men will not be buried because it is a reminder of the haters. It's a reminder of this. And yet, in front of everyone, 3.5 days, the breath of God will enter them, and they will stood up, and it will strike terror in all who saw it. And then it says, then they hear a loud voice from heaven saying, come up here, and they will go up to heaven while their enemies look on. What dramatic staging. There is some CNN or BBC or CBC commentator talking about this, and then all of a sudden the breath of God comes in, and right in front of the whole world, these two individuals will have a voice that will come out from heaven and say, come up here! And immediately in front of them, they will go up in the clouds of heaven while their enemies look on. Everyone will know that there's something supernatural going on. Everyone will know that God is doing something because of these two witnesses. It's going to be absolutely fantastic, beyond comprehension. And the reality is that this is actually going to happen. It's going to be very exciting. It's going to be terrifying. But more importantly, it's going to be God. My name is Robert Dean Steele. This is your daily Bible class. You have yourself a great and godly day.